Now, the Federal Ministry of Education says that the new rule or policy announcement, if you like, is nothing new because the Minister of Education, Professor Tahiru Maman, himself, someone who has spent decades in this very important sector, says that that has always been the trajectory. So there's nothing really strange about the whole thing. But we understand that the education community, as we know it, especially at the tertiary level, is now divided about their stance in terms of whether or not this policy arrangement is something that will work or otherwise. We're going to find out this morning from someone himself an academic joining us live from Federal University Keshere in Gombe State via Zoom this morning, an associate professor in the Department of International Relations, Dr. Sule Babayo. We would like to say a big thank you to you for joining us this morning. My colleague Jumai and I will engage you and talk about these developments, what parents think of it, how those in the sector too, critical stakeholders as they call them, also feel about these new announcements. So let's start by first of all asking you, as it stands today, because Juma and I, we had this back and forth yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Yes, 18 years is the minimum requirement age-wise. But what happens if you have a child who is exceptionally sound academically? Are you saying they have to wait all the way, even though they are 15 now, till they are 18, which is a 3-year period?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, listeners out there. First of all, I want us to know that there's a constitutional policy in the Nigerian context that usually most things that has to do with, for example, eligibility for participation in the electoral process, eligibility for participation in personal contract, eligibility for, in fact, even some games in Play Store in the Android, they will ask you whether you have reached 18 years of age or not. If you have not, they will not grant you the permission to start playing the game. Although in the case of the social media, it is entirely exceptionally different because sometimes I believe I see like TikTok, Facebook, and others usually are used to start from 13 years of age in Nigeria, where they will give permission for someone to operate the platform or the app. But generally, to me, I didn't see it as a problem, and I didn't see it as a good a policy. There are, just as you asked, the question is, what of, for example, if we have an exceptionally talented, there is an education curriculum, an education system that is operated in other societies like in China, in India, and even here in the Nigerian context, some private universities and some private schools, nursery, primary, and secondary, used to operate this system, what we call the Montessori learning model, whereby learning is based on individual capacity and not based on your curriculum. Just to give you an example, I don't know whether you know what we call the Sangaya or the Quranic school where the Al-Majris are, or the Islamia school. The pattern or the system of learning is that to each according to his need and to each according to his ability. That's why you will see some children can memorize the entire glorious Quran in just 2 or 3 years because they have the sharpness and the capacity to do that, while others can spend as good as 10 to 12 years or even 15 without memorizing it. Now, in this regard, if you say that all the children must go with the same curriculum, that means the student that will be able to memorize in 2 years, you are now taking him as far as 15 years. By the time it reaches that level, he might be discouraged and he will not even be able to do it. And if you say that a student that has the capacity for 10 to 15 years must now do it in 2 years, you are forcing him to do what he will not be able to do, and you will discourage him, you will have to exit. So therefore, I think this has to do with the discretion of the parents. Of course, the government has its own reason. For example, the desperation to acquire certificate at all costs, which is not the major purpose of education, which is not the purpose of knowledge. The purpose of education is to ensure that someone has followed certain systematic procedure, has followed some structural organization, so that from one term to another, from one year to another, from one level to another, that 6334 curriculum is religiously followed, because each term, each curriculum, each year has its own unique attitude, behavioral learning process, and other character that it should be inculcated in the student. By jumping one out of it, maybe you are skipping some fundamental aspect of maybe not even learning, but maybe behavioral learning, or maybe a character that, or the experience that a child is supposed to acquire. So maybe that is why the government is annoyed that some parents are becoming desperate. You will see that first of all, their children will start with nursery one. From nursery one, they will jump then to primary one. From primary four, they will jump then to JS1. From JS2, they will jump then to SS1. From SS2, they will ask them to write WAEC, so that at the age of 15, they will already be in the university. They are desperate to see them graduate with a university degree, so that they will just get a job for them. In their own wisdom is to secure their future while they are alive. Well, there is nothing wrong in parents are thinking of the future of their children, but there is something wrong in rushing them to get what they are not entitled to, or what may not be incongruent, or what will tantamount to what they are parading as a qualification to them. So therefore, there are two sides of it. On the aspect of the government, I am sure the government is not coming up with the policy in order to tarnish or to dwarf the growth of the Nigerian children. That is not the purpose. But on the other way around, I think the government should also be considerate of some gifted or exceptional children. That if you do that, then you are directly dwarfing or decreasing or stalling the production of manpower in the country, because they have whatever it takes to progress to the next level without reaching that age. But even most importantly here, at this point that we need to notice is, what is the enforcement model? That is the problem. The problem with Nigeria is not that we don't have the rules. We have the regulations, well articulated, well designed, but the enforcement or the compliance is the problem. Will the parent comply with the provision of this regulation? Will the regulatory body, that is the Ministry of Education, both the federal and the state, and the LEA, be able to regulate and ensure enforcement? What will happen if parents decided now to alter the certificate of birth of their children by shooting their years forward, and then enabling them to graduate at 18 while at 15 or 16, while claiming to be 18? And what about particularly private schools, in which we know, of course, we must say kudos to them, because they are there to complement what the government will not be able to provide because of too many number of people in the country. But at the same time, majority of them are just out there for money making. What about such schools, which you don't even need to alter the certificate of birth? You don't need to do anything. They will just allow your children to just graduate at any age that they want. Once they are writing WAEC, they will just alter the date of birth themselves.
All right, Mr.
Yes.
Sule, I'm glad you've spoken in depth concerning the rationale behind the penalty, as in the issue when it has to do with being 18 before you write these external examinations. Now, I want to ask, now a child who is 15 years has to wait till he or she is 18 years. Now, what adequate measures have been put in place in order for the child to be well prepared at 18 years to write the exam, to write the examination, which is WAEC and NECO?
That is the problem. I think that is what the policymakers should look into. Because, for example, if a child is now 15 years and has already reached maybe SS3, which means he is supposed to write the exam, then you stall him by saying that he should wait for the next 3 years. There is no guarantee that what he has learned will remain as it is, or will he still continue to be learning and relearning and unlearning in the next 3 years cycling within the same level, or will just go
Exactly.
home and just continue to mind social media and other things, sitting down and wait, or what will he do exactly? So to me, I think education is a tax of all stakeholders: the government, the parent, the teachers, the society, the environment, and almost everybody, security and others. So it is not maybe it is not the exclusive powers of just the policymakers to sit down and pick edge for writing WAEC and NECO or whatever without adequate consultation. You know, one of the problems of the Nigerian democracy is that in a democracy, any policy that will affect the entire society should be subjected to rigors of debate. Just like, for example, changing the national anthem in the National Assembly. This is something that every Nigerian is expected to be singing in an occasion as a patriotic Nigerian. So, because it affects all, you should now subject it to national hearing by maybe even if it is going to be based on geopolitical zone, even if it is going to be an elitist national hearing, so that the intellectuals and the media and other stakeholders will come before some members of the National Assembly in each geopolitical zone for the hearing. Now, in the case of this age fagging, they are supposed by maybe the Ministry of Education is supposed to propose a bill in the National Assembly for that. Then the National
Okay.
Assembly should now initiate the process of national hearing so that in each geopolitical zone, the academics, the teachers, the parent, the media, and of course, all the stakeholders involved in education in one way or the other should come and say their views. So that by that, they will now go back based on the majority number of the views expressed, take a decision. Because, in fact, madam, let me be real with you. As far as the Nigerian state is concerned, this policy will not work. That's just the truth of the matter.
Okay.
Because any parent that has his child at the age of 18 waiting to ride WAEC or NECO, two things will happen here, definitely. Either is he, if he is rich, or three things rather. If he is rich enough, he may decide to skip the entire country, take his child to another country, whether US, UK, China, or any other
Very true.
society,
Very
and see
true.
him, yeah, and see him graduating there, even attending university. And in fact, before he even comes back, he will graduate with a university or even master's degree at the age of 25. Can you deny him participating in the NYSC? Of course, no. Can you start asking when he write his own senior school certificate there abroad? No, because there is no such regulation that you have in your domestic environment there. That is one issue for those who are opportune to have the means. Second, those in private school will not impose this law. Mark my word, and we shall come and discuss this again, because they are of course providing a sound quality education. We must be fair to them, but they are also after the income that they will generate because it is a business. So you cannot ask them for it. And particularly that is even where the situation is even more rampant, because you will find in private schools in SS3 you will find that 50 to 60% of those writing the SSCE, they are below the age of 18, because they are in private school. It is the discretion of the parent. A parent will come while a child is in SS1 or 2 and say that I want him to start as a trial, so you will register him, and they cannot stop it. All that you need to do is you will just alter the date of birth. Number three, for those who cannot afford either abroad or who cannot afford private school, and they had already registered their children from primary one with a specific number of date of birth, and now they are unable to change it. Either they are not as sublime enough to have the means to change it or whatever, they may decide to withdraw their children and ask them to go to farm or to market, or even if it is female, they will just marry them at the age of 15 without even the SSC. And if they are all lucky, by the time they reach 18 years, what they had learned almost vanished. And then not all husbands will now allow their wives to continue. And even if they allow them, the challenges of marriage, pregnancy, responsibility of children, a responsibility of the husband and other matrimonial activities may hinder their progress to ride and continue. So to me,
Oh,
it is better
okay.
if this issue is skipped and then just the government should concentrate in the quality and the standard of the system than just an age.
All right. I want to ask a very, I want to ask a question now. Now, let's not talk about the educational reforms. Now, with this new policy, how can it impact or mar our educational reforms in Nigeria?
Well, I will say absolutely none, because age is not the issue or the matter. Yeah, what the educational reform to me should focus on providing an enabling environment for learning. Yeah, we know that the issue, for example, in the case of the federal government, you know how we are battling with the government to provide adequate funding for the university system. The government is not
True.
doing that. You know how we are battling
Exactly.
with the government to provide a motivation for the academies in order to concentrate and work. The government is not doing that. It has reached an extent whereby to renegotiate a new salary scale for the Nigerian academics in the university system, it has now entered into almost 14 or 15 years. There are 3 series of negotiation and renegotiation, but the government is always reneging from honoring the negotiation. And all those committee members that have been renegotiating on behalf of the government were appointed by the government to represent the government. They will sit down, renegotiate it, and then the government will decline. And if you come down to the lower levels, like primary and secondary schools, even the unity schools, that is the federal government schools, which I think are supposed to be stronger than public or state owned schools and LEA schools, you will see that one, the teachers are not adequately fed. For example, now, in some states, I know teachers with a university degree that are just paid 40,000 naira. Now, for God's sake, a teacher that has a wife, even if he has, in fact, forget even about a wife. Let's say he is single. A teacher alone with a 40,000 naira, even if he doesn't need to take any transportation, he has proximity to his place where he is learning. And apart from that, also, he doesn't need to go and take rent or whatever. Let's assume it's just about feeding. What will 40,000 naira do, even if it is only for breakfast? And are you expecting such a person to concentrate and deliver a quality teaching that you want? And you will discover that in the case of suburbs, most of the state government, they can build as much as 100 classrooms in one single school, but they will not care to build one, what they call it, a staff room for the staff to sit down and concentrate and do their work. All that is important is the classrooms for the children to enter, but there is no staff room for the staff to sit down, mark register, mark test and assignment, and do other work. So therefore, to me, the reforms should focus in providing an enabling environment and adequate motivation and compensation. That so-called axiom that is always linked to the late President Yar'Adua of blessed memory, that the reward of a teacher is in heaven, I think is only applicable in the Nigerian context. If you go to other societies, the reward of a teacher is on earth and in heaven, and that is how it is supposed to be. You cannot give a politician his reward in Nigeria. You give an NPC, CBN, FIRS, and other workers their reward in Nigeria. Then you single out a teacher that is producing all of them, the politicians, the civil servant, the other parastatal workers, and almost everybody in the society, and say that it is only him that his reward is in heaven. He is not the only one that wants to go to heaven. All of us wants to go to heaven, no matter how criminal we are. So give him his reward here on earth, give him his reward in the heaven. That is justice. So therefore, the reform should focus on the system and not age. I think it doesn't matter. That is it.
All right, I want to ask, you know, this new policy, has there been any study or research to prove that this age requirement is appropriate for children, 18 years writing WAEC or NECO? Has there been any research conducted? In your own opinion, that is.
That is the problem. You know, I'm not an educationist, and I am not opportune to come across any research. All that I know is most of the research conducted that has to do with issue of child learning, basic learning, elementary and post-elementary learning, and other things globally and in Nigerian context. focus more on just delivering a set of curriculum to the child and a set of behavioral learning and the environment of learning and the quality of the instructors and the material of learning than age. Age, to me, is usually associated with some psychological theories that used to say that at so certain level your powers is on honors, at so level you have oral powers, at so level you have adulthood powers, at so age you have brain development and all these things. But even the theories of this psychological analysis will tell you that it has to do with individual differences and individual learning. It is not universally applicable. You cannot say, for
Exactly.
example, if at the age of 3, a child A has a brain development that will qualify him to be in nursery 1, it will be the same with a child B. It cannot be the same with a child C. Because here
True.
you are dealing with human beings as social animals are not giving a uniform or sacrosanct prediction, because they always tend to differ based on their attitude, based on differences, based on inbuilt mechanism, and based on other factors. So therefore, to this, I don't think there is any justification. In fact, our policy makers do not even consider our research or findings of our research in doing their own policies. I don't think they do. If they do, by now I think Nigeria should have been somewhere competing with China, India, Brazil, and other our mate, or even more than that. For example, we have been writing, making our own input on governance, on policies, on sound electoral process and whatever. But who look at it? Who cares? They cannot even give you the money to conduct the research. And even if you use your own mega income to conduct the research, they will not care to even look at the findings. So I cannot just preempt and say that there is not. But I don't think there is any research that can justify that you must attain so age before you can acquire so knowledge. This theory, I can say with any iota of doubt that no psychologist or educationist can justify that.
As we wrap up now, Doc, I want to jam two questions in one. The Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, has unequivocally said that this policy is not new, that there's a trajectory to it, there's a pattern to it, there's a history to it. The first question is, at what point did we miss it? That we're not having a conversation as though it's a new idea. That's the first. The second is, sadly so, we have a history of having controversies around age. So today somebody is 21. You wake up tomorrow morning, they are 26. The day after that, they are 31. Will this policy, as we know it now, which is the front burner conversation we're having this morning, not engender age falsification for parents who might become desperate to say, my child has got to get into school, whether they are 18 or not?
Well, thank you very much. I think that is where the ministry is missing it. Because if it has a history, or rather if it is a standing law, this should be subjected to the rigors of debate. You cannot just initiate or reactivate the policy without educating the people properly. You should tell us at what time is such a law enacted, and where and by who, and when was it violated, or when did the violation started. For example, I will tell you a surprising revelation that I wrote my own WAEC exams in 1998 at the age of 16. And when we are filling the forms, we were asked to write our own date of birth. And that date of birth is what I'm using till date. I remain unchanged. And I know many who continue. So if as far back as 1998, someone can write at the age of 16, that is below 18. Then, when was such a law existing? At which year? And when did the violation started? We need to know this. We need an explanation. And then secondly is that, as you said, this is not an issue to me, because it is very simple. If I have a child, he is now at the age of 18 or 15 or 16, and he's now in SS3, I can just simply go and make an affidavit. In fact, if I make an affidavit, it is not even a crime, because it is allowed by the Nigerian law. that now his age of birth is so, and then it is legal and valid and it can be accepted, and he can write his exams, and then he can proceed. So there will be no compliance, there will be no enforcement. It cannot just simply work. So it is better if they will just pay attention to the quality, to the services, to the effective and genuine delivery, than just an age, which to me is not. I gave you an example, for example, with the Quranic school. A child can start from zero, and then by at the age of 2 he can memorize it, which is around 600 pages, and then someone can spend as far as, in fact, an almajiri can leave his own parent, his own town, and spend over 20 years without memorizing it, just wandering around. Now someone in his own parent house in 2 years can memorize it. So I think an individual learning is different, so it should not be covered, or it should not be deterred with an age. Rather, it should be enshrouded in equality, which is most important to me. They should just focus and pay attention to what will make the system improve in terms of standard. Why are, for example, primary pupil in China being taught how to produce toys, when primary school pupil in Nigeria are just being taught A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and other verbal and aptitude reasoning? We should now start asking ourselves this: why are we still speaking in English when others are speaking in their own language and advancing without any waste of time, quickly and easily learning, facilitated by their own system? Now you have to learn English first as a language, then second you have to learn your own profession as a profession, while others are just learning their profession directly as a profession. Why don't we look into such things? Why don't we look into our curriculum? Why are we still learning some things in our curriculum? Why, for example, in my own political science in a university, why am I still teaching Marxism? Why am I still teaching some old theories as far back as 5,000 years? Why not contemporary theories? Why am I not concentrating more on African and Nigerian politics, parties, and election? Rather, I'm just more focused on global politics. Why? I think this is what we should ask ourselves. This is what we should focus.
Okay, I think that's a fair response to give to such concerns, because this issue is a bit more complicated than we know at this point. There's the private university angle to it. I mean, we can pretend all we want, at least on the program here, but we do know that these private universities are profit-oriented.
Yes, they are.
Yes, a good number of them are doing amazing work, whether it's research or academy, industry kind of collaboration and what have you. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they have to stay sustainable, because certain lifelines that are available or open to public universities are not accessible to them. All right. We also need to look at how this will impact them, because in the final analysis, if this policy comes to stay, because we also see the possibility of a litany of litigations coming through, I mean, some sort of resistance or opposition to it. But Doc, talk to us quickly about what could happen, all right, with private universities in particular, because we know at some point it's going to be, first, the Ministry of Education, and second, the Nigerian Universities Commission coming hard with a big stick against universities. How would that also in peculiar ways impact private universities?
I think nothing, absolutely. All that they will ask you to do is, when you are filling your forms for admission in their universities, they'll just ask you to go and obtain a new date of birth, which you can get in 1 minute. Just a phone call to those working either in population or in the judiciary. You will get a new date of birth. That is if you have an old one, and then in a minute you can replace it, then you can apply. So even in the public universities too, not even in the private. So it is just a 1 minute appear to get it changed. Then you apply, then you continue your studies. So it will not, if, for example, the only way that this can be imposed, which we have been advising the policymakers, that is why I said that the policymakers do not care about our own input. Even though the government is the one sponsoring us to go and study at advanced level so that we can become researchers, it is the government that is still paying us to feed ourselves and our families so that we continue to research. But they don't listen. They don't use our own findings. We have been telling the government that we need a database. Now in India, for example, or in Malaysia, I saw a kind of a system whereby a newly born child is already enrolled in a database system directly from the hospital where he is born. Directly, they will take his particulars, what is his name, the date of birth, the hour, the place of birth, his own parent name and address and whatever, and that database remains so continuous. That is what he will use throughout his life in that country. No one can alter it. It is already on the system. And in the case of Brazil, they started doing this since 1990s. So by now, any child that is born in the 1990s to date is automatically on this database. If, for example, the government has such database, at least I believe that intellectuals have been talking to the government the need for this database, not even for the sake of education, but for the sake of planning, for the sake of security, for the sake of so many other things that we can use for multiple purposes. But there is none. So how can you detect someone's age just by mere looking at his date of birth, which can be easily altered in a minute? The same government institutions, the same government agent can give you multiple date of birth if you wish, and any time that you wish, and no one can query or question it. So therefore, to me, it is not even a serious matter that we need to even waste our time on it. It is better maybe to focus on more important things. That cannot be any, it is inconsequential. It cannot be any, it has no any implication as far as I is concerned. The universities will continue to get the maximum number that they want in a very simple way without waste of time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Babayo Sule, for joining us all the way from Keshere in Gombe State this morning to help straighten out this conversation.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you for being a part of Global Morning. Thank you for your well of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure.
I mean, you and I started having this discussion yesterday, actually, even though today all we just had to do was to expand the frontiers. It just goes to show that no matter how challenging the country is right now, in whatever area you want to think about it from, it still goes to show very clearly that people are interested in what happens in critical aspects of their lives, especially as it has to do with education. You and I can sit here and imagine how parents across this country, even abroad, those in the diaspora, because they still have people here. There are families who live abroad, but they have one or two children over here who are either in school or are just about to get into school or will get into school at some point and things like that. But we hope whatever the final decision will be that it be in the ultimate, overall interest of this country.
Exactly, and let's not forget that there should be a balance between the federal government and, of course, parents, and it's very important that we create that balance. And then with that, we have to wrap up the program, Global Morning. Thank you all so much for being a part of the program from 7 till at about this time, and I hope to join us tomorrow, same time. And I am Jumai Manson, and my co-host,
I'm Uyag Mofwegwe, and please let's also keep in mind that the views of our guests on all of our programs, including Global Morning, are their opinions.
Yes, and have an amazing day ahead. Bye-bye.